Very good afternoon to you all out there and warm welcome. I'm not too sure if I should say a Happy New Year, but I want to say I wish you a very safe year. Goeiemiddag, goeie laatmiddag aan julle almal. Ja, ek kan goeie Afrikaans praat. Uh ek sal 'n bietjie later daaroor meer detail gee. Just please remember to action the like button, share on Facebook or WhatsApp and Twitter or Facebook, and also please press the subscribe button, and also please press the notification button for the latest videos. Okay, firstly, before presenting today's topic, I want you to know why do we do videos and why do we go on the public platform. Well, it's called responsibility, and we need to share not just our opinions, but what's actually going on, so that you are better equipped in your thinking and decisions that have to be made in the country, in South Africa. If God has given you spiritual sight to see and wisdom and the knowledge, then it is for us to share this with one another. We are believers in the reality and not just believers in a fairy tale storybook. So let's quickly cover the following aspects today. But before I get there, I just want to let you know where I acquired my Afrikaans skills in the language. After matric, I was called up for national service, and my Afrikaans was dankie and totsiens and lekker kos and lekker slaap. But clearing in the Defence Force, during basics, there was roll call. Now, as most of you can remember, basics was 3 months long. And every evening there's roll call. So the leader group, the corporals, or in the artillery we call them bombardiers, they would call our names up on a piece of paper. And you had to go and run out of the squad, stand to attention and look at your instructor. But my instructors battled to pronounce my surname properly. They called me everything but McGimpsey, and I would smile. So you don't smile, but I would smile, and I'd smile a lot. And because I smiled, I'd run around the bungalows or the tents or around the parade ground with a projectile, G2 projectile. Can't recall the weight, but I think somewhere around about 30, 35 kgs plus. And then when you're carrying this weight, you learn quickly to speak Afrikaans. And then, of course, later, when you go into the field and you do your specialized training in gunnery and fire discipline, it was all in Afrikaans. So, yeah, that's where I learned to quickly learn my Afrikaans. Otherwise, I'd be running with projectiles to this very day. Good. So, today I'm going to talk to you about two faces. Let's call it a green and a red face. Green being, the facts, and the red is the fear that we have. So again, I'm going to look at a bit of history, and look at the situation back then and the now, and compare our biblical times, 2,000 years ago, with our business environment, our political space, our judicial system, and of course, our nation today. And then you must just compare these two faces that I want to talk about today. All right, so if we look at the biblical times, there were disciples that followed Jesus for 3 to 4 years, and they witnessed many, many miracles. For example, the disciples witnessed Jesus turning the water into wine at a wedding, Jesus driving out evil spirits out of many people, Jesus raising the dead, like Lazarus. He was dead for a few days. He was raised. Jesus has calmed many stormy seas and healed numerous sick, like the 10 lepers on the way to Jerusalem. And of course, the big one we can remember well is feeding the 5,000 with a handful of fish and bread. And of course, Jesus healing the woman that was crippled for 18 years. So there's many miracles that the disciples witnessed with Jesus with a face, with a reality. But then let's look at the other face that the disciples had. Let's call it the red face, the fear. When the heat was on, when Jesus was caught and tried and was on his way to the crucifixion, the disciples bolted. They ran away, they hid away. Only John, of all the 12 disciples, was present. But let's look at these disciples, the two faces that the disciples had in the biblical times. Well, let's look at Peter. He denied Jesus 3 times during his crucifixion or on the way to his crucifixion. But Peter said earlier that he would lay down his life for Jesus. So why did Peter deny Jesus 3 times? Well, he was scared and he feared for his life. Let's look at Thomas, doubting Thomas. And he also said that when Jesus first appeared to the disciples and he was told by the others, we have seen the Lord. Thomas replied that he would not believe it unless he actually touched Jesus' wounds. So see, there was doubt. There was doubt in Thomas. And we all know what happened. Judas betrayed Jesus at the Last Supper. Jesus confronted Judas at the Last Supper by telling him, what you are about to do, do it quickly. So you see, Judas and the other disciples had two faces. It was mainly fear, and in Judas' case, mainly money, because he sold Jesus for silver. Okay, what is noticeable about this? Well, fear. The disciples had fear, which overcame their faith. So yes, they had the faith, but at a stage they had fear. Now, similarly, I've mentioned before, Peter on the stormy seas of Galilee, when he saw Jesus, he climbed out of the boat and he walked in the water. But all of a sudden, fear crept in and he started to sink. Now, this is the problem that we're having, is the fear, which we will discuss as we go on. If we look at our business environment, we also see two faces. And all of you that are businessmen or are employed, you'll know what I'm talking about. That in business, there's also two faces. Similarly, as we experience in the biblical times. Now, when you're negotiating contracts, quotes, service level agreements, they seem to be one-sided and they're not a win-win agreement. In that, you can see two faces. With my personal experience, you have clients finding fault, saying you're too expensive, or that you're not involved enough, or that your BE scorecard isn't high enough. It's not level 1. But these things are all said to get friends in and so forth. But again, here, one can see two faces, or even more. And of course, the demise of the relationships follow due to not having one face in business. And if you look at directors and management and employees, you can see that when you're busy with your one-on-one meetings, a picture is painted that is green. A green picture is painted that all is well in your operation, but then when you go and inspect on the ground, you find it's not green, but it's red. Again, that you see two faces. And of course, when management or your senior members are approached, then of course they are apprehensive and they deny the same. And of course, it leads to the demise and the ruin of companies and people. Again, looking at the employees, One creates jobs and opportunities, but the employees are never happy with their salaries. And they engage unions to wrestle you to submission. So again, you see two faces in the business sector. Also, if I can mention, I've mentioned this before, we have things like the Black Business Forum. Now, can you imagine if you have a white business forum? See, there will be two faces there too. Similarly, with the Black Lawyers Council or versus a White Lawyers Council, they would have two faces. So there's always confusion. Nobody is very clear on what to be or how to be. What is noticeable in business? Well, here we have allowed BEE to fear us into submission and not to force WE with black-owned companies. Now, I'm saying this for a reason, because there's too many faces in business, and this is why we sit with unemployment, we sit with unhappiness, and we sit with a very bad, weak economy, non-existent economy, with little to no growth going forward. So let's go and look at the faces in the political space. This is very, very important. President Cyril Ramaphosa in May of 2020, with his SONA address, he talked about the removal of the white monopoly capital and being the reason for high unemployment. And then on the very following Sunday, he said that we must pray as a nation and be unified against this pandemic. Can you see there the two faces? Now, if you look at Julius Malema, he pushes the racial division and yet wants to be president of South Africa. How's this possible? Not likely, is it? And the same with Andile Maxitama from the PLF, when he said that on a public platform, all the whites and their dogs and their cats must be killed. Why does he walk free, but others are behind bars for minor racial verbal comments? So you see two faces in the political spectrum. We also have Muzi Maimane and Herman Mashaba that left the DA, but still want to unite the nation on their own respective ways. Again, we see two faces, not one face. Let's look at the coalition governments in Gauteng. We have the DA, and then of course we have the EFF and supporting the others. But there's too many faces. Here we sit with a situation of a rotten apple or potato in the barrel, and of course we know the saying: if there's a rotten apple in the barrel or potato, the rest goes rotten. So it's not possible. With two faces, you can't manage, you can't govern. It's a total mess. But what is noticeable about this in the political spectrum? Okay, here is fear. Fear is used by politicians to suppress us into submission and to immigrate overseas. This is the general face that we see in the political space. No unification, no one nation, no nation building, no rainbow nation, nothing to look forward to. So, yeah, we have different faces in the political spectrum. Let's look at the judicial system. We have, and I'm going to be straight here, we have whites behind bars for minor verbal racial comments. But we have our black politicians have promoted bloodshed and hatred against minority ethnic groups, creating serious polarization today. They have not looked after their own people. They've kept them hungry and they're without work, but they still walk free. What is noticeable here? Well, in our legal system, our legal system fear the political elite. Judges and magistrates, they fear the political elite. Let me tell you. And therefore, the political elite are favored. They clearly here we see judges and magistrates unskilled, wearing many faces, when only one face should be in the judicial system, and that should then only prevail. Lastly, let's look at the nation today. How many faces do we see in our nation today? Let's take inside the church, we are one. We wear one face. And then outside the church, we are separated. We are polarized. We keep quiet, and we are scared, and we fear for our lives, as the disciples did with Jesus and his crucifixion. We continue to vote for unbelievers to rule over believers, resulting in what we have today in South Africa: total disrespect and chaos. On the BE side, which has caused more human misery since 1994 and its inception than what the apartheid policy did back in the day. We have the rich elite in positions of power still ignoring the needs of the poor, and as mentioned time and again, you can see them at the robots lying along the streets, sleeping under trees, under bridges, total mess. Okay, but what's noticeable here? Here, the nation fears the politicians, and the politicians continue to use fear to suppress a nation into submission, resulting in immigration to overseas. Right, let's look at summary. Let's look at the summary then. We are dealing with evil spirits, intimidating and manipulating our lives and our destinies. We wear the Christian face inside church, and outside we wear the fear face, fearing the Romans like the disciples did back in the day. And in this case, we are fearing the ruling parties and their affiliates. So, we say we have the Holy Spirit, but actually we fear, and we have fear in our lives. We have fear in our workplace, and we have fear in our existence. Are we getting the picture now? We have two faces. So do we have the faith? Because if you have the faith, you don't have the fear. But we are seeing fear because we're all quiet. Okay, so having two or more faces in our nation reflects a negative and a very blind attitude towards what is really happening around you. We remain ignorant, hence we reap the fruits of corruption, deceit, lies, and just plain bad energy in South Africa. And we saw it with the opening of the year with the Cape Town Parliament set alight. Okay, so we still fear, and that's our problem. And because of that, we can't make decisions. We remain lost, and we can't take a correct course of action. All right, so here's the left hook or the punchline. If we are one in the Holy Spirit, how can we have two faces? And in some cases, more. Think about it. If you're one in the Holy Spirit, if you have the faith, how do you fear? Why do you fear? God is there for you. He's your provider. Right. So this is exactly why Southland Defence Suidlandverdediging has come into existence, as it is a faith initiative and organization to provide shelter and a survival and protection plan for the minority groups when the many faces, as mentioned above or before, start turning themselves into destruct mode, burning what has been built since after the Anglo-Boer War. Now, as you all know, part of health and safety, you all know what health and safety is in your respective companies and organizations, is to have a fire drill or an emergency drill or plan of sorts that you're all acquainted with or should be acquainted with by now, and the same applies here. One needs a plan. One needs an alternative in times of anarchy. So that's why Suidlandverdediging is there. So join Suidlandverdediging, Southland Defence, while you still can. Be part of an organization that has a sustainable plan, which can only work if there's numbers. 1 or 2, 3 people is not going to work. You need hundreds of people. You need thousands of people to make this plan viable. It's a viable solution in the event of total anarchy. So below will be links for you to acquaint yourselves with to join. Again, please like, share on all possible platforms, subscribe, and press that notification button for new videos. I'm looking forward to seeing you again in 2 weeks' time. Stay well, safe, and remain sharp.